Hello everyone and welcome to another video on Marvel Rivals. Today I want to go through characters I would like to see in the game. Now most of these are characters that are unknown or maybe aren't being commented on as much as other characters people have been sort of saying for the game. Just to kind of give a little bit of variety out there, because a lot of people are choosing different things, you know, depending on what their characters, what their favorites are. I'm trying to think on a round out the game basis as well as some things that I like as well. So it's a little bit of a biased one, but it's also got some sensible ideas in there personally, I think. So what I've done is I've picked some characters based primarily on their primarily based on the roles in the game, and then I've picked other characters based on the team-ups that are already in the game, because you don't want too many team-ups way down the line, because if you end up with like 100 different types of team-ups, it's going to be a lot to learn. So I'm kind of thinking in regards to these team-ups we already have in the game and going with those and kind of building those out and bulking those out a little bit more. So first off, Vanguards. One of the characters I think would be a really good Vanguard is Juggernaut. Makes sense straight away. He's a very big character. He's got that big dome of a head. Perfect character, right? What I'm thinking for his ult is I think it should be like Bucky's ult, in that when you aim it, if you kill someone whilst you're charging, you're like stampeding towards them. If you kill them, it's an insta-kill if you hit them, but then you get the chance to move it to the next person. And the thing basically is, yes, he's an unstoppable force, and he will go until he hits a wall or whatever, or until he stops it, so to speak. But it has to be precision, it has to be aimed. So it's a very strong ult in a way, but it could be ineffectual, very much like Bucky's. And that's kind of my idea around Juggernaut. The rest of his abilities, I think you'd kind of basically have one where he kind of hits his head and gains probably like some kind of extra health or something like that, and I think he'd kind of have a little bit of more of a damage resistance in general, just for the armor that he wears. Another Vanguard that I think would be interesting is Sentry, and what I'd kind of do, I'd do a mode, like kind of like a cloak and dagger thing, where Sentry can gain some kind of, like, once he gets a lot of damage and he gets that negative kind of emotion going, he can turn into the void and then use some like dark energy, so to speak. Then he reverts afterwards. And I think the ult should be based around that kind of concept as well. Maybe even his ult is not necessarily based on a charge, it's based on taking a lot of damage, getting to 100 meter on void energy, so to speak, and he turns into this kind of unstoppable force. I think that would be a really cool, interesting idea. In a sort of similar fashion, for duelists, I was thinking Agatha Harkness. I think she would be a very interesting character to have in the game, primarily because I think it would be really cool to see her be able to I think it would be cool to see her be able to do very similar to the MCU iteration of her, take loads of damage in and then be able to use that to direct damage out. And I think that would be a really cool idea as well for a duelist, something that actually is a little bit different to what we have in the game currently, and allows a little bit more of a tankier duelist that can live a little bit more on their own, because they're taking damage, they're meant to take damage, you know, and then they use it to do their damage, so to speak. Equally, Foron. I think Foron you could do very similar to Wanda in the sense of like moving, and that's Monica Rambeau for those who've watched the MCU, etc. And very similar to Wanda in that she could phase out and phase back in. But I would kind of add a flashbang as well. I think that's something that's kind of like we don't really necessarily have in the game. Now, of course, there's always the consideration of, well, you don't want to be causing, you know, like hurting anyone when that happens on screen, etc. But I think something like that, or something where like the enemy is blinded, and so like it's basically your hit chance, your accuracy just goes down to 0 for a period. I think that would be kind of interesting if it was like something like Mantis's sleep, but it's a blind, so to speak, which I think could be a fun idea. Another one, Mr. Sinister, sorry, not Dr. Sinister. And Mr. Sinister would be a strategist, and my kind of idea around him is basically he creates you a 7th member. When he gets his ult, he can pick one of the enemy team, or like your own team, clone them, so to speak. So like a Loki ult, except it's a 7th person on the team. And it's like a weaker version, and basically the character would essentially do their ult and dissipate, so to speak, or otherwise stay around until they're, but it would follow Sinister around, essentially. So I think that would be a cool, fun idea, a little bit different, a little bit crazy, a little bit out there. And what it would allow is moments to allow for for one healer, right? You could have one healer and then you could have Sinister create another healer, which would be kind of fun to play with. Now it might be like broken balance wise, so you would kind of have to maybe like have a reduced damage, reduced health, etc., to make it like you can destroy them sort of easily. It's more like for a push or more to like obfuscate what's happening. So but I think that could be a fun one. And Doc Samson has already been referenced in the game when you have Moon Knight and Hulk talk, but Doc Samson, I think it'd be really cool to have a Gamma healer, and he was the one that kind of came to mind. I think having this kind of guy who is Gamma infused, yes, but not necessarily looking Gamma, apart from his green hair, could be a fun concept. But if they went with the Doc Sasquatch version, of course that would look a little bit more like that. If that was, and this is the thing you could do as well, you could almost have like this character who is a healer and then transforms into Doc Sasquatch and becomes sort of a Vanguard-esque or a bulkier healer, so to speak, sort of Brigitte in Overwatch, in that kind of style, right? Then we're going through these. So for Ragnarok Rebirth, I picked, I wanted to go with, and I thought there was a lot of very obvious options, and I basically went for one of the obvious ones in this instance, and I went with Valkyrie. But what I would do in this instance is not remove Hela, but allow Valkyrie to perform Hela's role. So Valkyrie would bring Thor and Loki back in the same way that Hela does, and what it would allow is allow you to have a different character, and it wouldn't mean that you have to have Hela to have that team up kind of pop off. And it's very fitting. Valkyries are kind of bring people to the halls of Valhalla, so it makes sense that she could kind of bring people back from the dead too. Metallic Chaos, now this one's very straightforward as well. I think this one's kind of, to the point. I think most people would kind of think this, but I think the way I would do this is the interesting part. Polaris. But what I would do with Polaris is I would have Polaris be able to both enable the buff for Magneto and enable it for Wanda. And what I mean by that is I would have basically Wanda will give Hex Magic to so Wanda would do the same as she does for Magneto, she would do for Polaris, but Polaris could do it for Magneto as well, is what I was trying to say. And so Polaris can enhance Magneto's with her own kind of polarizing energy, so to speak. And that, I think, would be a fun concept to have, because you've got a character who can kind of fulfill both sides of the bargain, so to speak. Voltaic Union, this one is all about who wields Thor's hammer, and I think the obvious option that isn't there right now, but also an Avenger, is Vision. I think Vision would be a really interesting character to do that with, especially if you did something to do with him. Like, I think you would allow it to be, I think you could have a moment where Vision kind of has maybe something more like the Gamma Charge, the Gamma Charge one, where Vision can go invisible, immaterial and go through a wall, but like still leaves like an electric charge or something like that. It's a little bit different to what's there currently, but I'm trying to think of cool, fun things to do here. Planet X Pals, now I had two ideas for this. One would be Baby Groot. I think that'd be really cool from a standing on Groot's shoulders perspective. I don't know necessarily what Baby Groot would do, apart from I think it would be a damage character, and I think it would have something to do with Rocket's bombs from Rocket, which I think would be a really funny concept. Or you could do a healer and you could kind of have him like run around doing little heals. Either way. Or the opposite one for this one was Cosmo, because Cosmo kind of fits into that kind of animal role as well. But Cosmo I would have as a damage character. In other games, Cosmo's been a healer, and stuff like that. I think damage. I think a telekinetic damage dealer that kind of does stuff at range and is on Groot's back will be kind of funny in its own way. Then you've got Symbiote Bond. Now, there's very easy ones you could do here. You could go for Scream. You could go for Carnage, etc., right? Anti-Venom, all those types of stuff. I went with something a little bit different, and I went for Scorpion. Now, Mac Gargan has also had the symbiote that Venom is, so to speak, and I think that would be a really interesting one to add to this team up, just because he was Venom for quite a while as part of the Dark Avengers, and I think it just fits with the concept a little bit better than like having a totally separate symbiote be part of that team. Gamma Charge. Now, I was thinking hard on this one, and I basically decided, actually, what's happening here in this one is that you have Illuminati members. You have Doctor Strange and you have Iron Man. So I was thinking, out of the other Illuminati members, Nemo's already in the game. Professor X is kind of a weird one to talk about because, like, yes, you could do a newer Professor X, but generally I feel like Professor X is going to be one that would be kind of hard to develop for this game. Not saying that they shouldn't do him, and personally, if they added him tomorrow, I'd probably be playing him. But yeah, so I was thinking between Black Bolt and Mr. Fantastic. Now, there's rumors about Mr. Fantastic already, so I thought we'd leave that one because there's probably things already happening with that. And I thought instead, Black Bolt. So Black Bolt's powers are already pretty strong with his voice, so to speak. But what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking almost what you'd have with Black Bolt is you'd have him be able to, he'll project his voice but in a certain area, but his voice would go a wider area with the gamma and it would hit in a green arc, so to speak. That's my kind of idea for that one. Ammo Overload. Now, we have a lot of characters who are pretty, you know, like heavy hitters, right? So I thought let's add another one to that with Deathlock. Now, Deathlock was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but also is a very prevalent character generally. He's in a lot of other games as well. And he has a large plasma rifle that basically mows people down all the time. Makes perfect sense for Ammo Overload. I don't need to go into that one more. If you want to look up Deathlock, feel free. Dimensional Shortcut. I went back and forth on this one a little bit because this is probably one of the most weirdest ones in game because those characters don't really interact all that much outside of this kind of thing. It's made up for the game, so to speak. But it is about brawlers. It is about people who get in there, get out. First of all, I thought Tigra. I thought Tigra kind of fits the kind of get out idea, but I thought that Tigra would probably be, if you did that, very similar to Black Panther in a way, and so I nixed that. I went with something else. I decided to go for America Chavez. And the reason I went for that is I think America could do a very similar function to what Valkyrie would do in the Ragnarok Rebirth, and basically you could have America instead of magic, basically the return would be through the stars that America creates, punches in the universe. So that would be that one. What I thought for this one, now I've been playing a little bit of League recently, and I don't know if this has influenced my choice with this one, but Lunar Force, instantly thought Werewolf by Night. And I think this makes sense not only because they Moon Knight has worked with Werewolf by Night before and like actually fought against them as well, but it makes sense just from a Lunar perspective, right? But I think having this character who's, and by the way, the League of Legends reference, Warwick, right? I'm thinking, what if you have this character who's kind of like leaping in, leaping out, and like kind of ambushes people and can kind of maul them and stuff like that, but has an invisibility when paired with Cloak and Dagger, right? Sounds really fun, right? So that is my idea for that one. This one is probably the most basic standard. It has a little bit of reasoning, but basic standard one ever, and that's Guardians Revival. I would just add Gamora to the game and put Gamora in this. Gamora was in the Soul Stone at a number of points, well, in the comics, but also in the MCU, as we know. Well, she was kind of taken in by the Soul Stone and died. You know what I mean? But basically, Gamora's linked to the Soul Stone, so is Adam, and that's kind of part of this kit, so to speak. So, and kind of linked through souls and stuff like that. So that to me makes the most sense for that one. Chilling Charisma. This one was a hard one. I basically just decided in the end to go for the most obvious choice, Iceman. I had a few other contenders, like Hydro Man I did think about because it's kind of more about water being frozen into ice, but I think Iceman, and basically I'd just make his ice hit all the harder. Basically turn one ice hit into two ice hits or something like that. Allied Agents. Now, this one was a hard one because I was thinking of all the S.H.I.E.L.D. people it could be. You could go Mockingbird, you could go Maria Hill, who I did end up picking, you could go Nick Fury, etc., right? You could go Sharon Carter, Peggy Carter, there's loads of different options, right? I did in the end go Maria Hill, and the reason why, all I can think of is what if Maria Hill has the rocket launcher that she had in Spider-Man, Far From Home, and like that would just be brilliant, right? This like the after image from Hawkeye comes on and she just rocket launches and this character's just dead straight away. That would be an insanely funny thing to do. Atlas. Now, a lot of people might not know what Atlas is, and I think maybe the primary one people would say would be Jimmy Woo, but for me, I decided to go with Brawn, the Amadeus Cho, which is basically another Hulk. And I thought what you would do there is you'd actually allow Brawn to do the same thing as what Iron Fist does, in terms of you would have it be able to empower Luna with gamma radiation instead of the chi, and it would do the same sort of thing. So another version. And Brawn I would have as a sort of a healer as well, so you could have this dual healer support, because there's not many healer team ups at the moment. I think you need more of those in the game. ESU alumnus, I was looking up the actual list of these, and a lot of them were actually spelled, so I felt like it didn't really make sense. You could have gone for Johnny Storm, because he did go to ESU, and I think Spidey and Johnny are friends, but it doesn't really fit his kit. I went with Green Goblin in the end for this one, because I think that net, that little paralyzing net that is given to Squirrel Girl, fits with the kind of idea of Green Goblin as well. He's a tinkerer, he's got loads of different like bombs and stuff like that. I think that would fit very well with this kind of kit, right? So that's why I went with that one. And Fastball Special, now the obvious choice is Colossus, but like a less known choice, She-Hulk as well. I think She-Hulk would be a really fun one to do in this instance, because I really remember that comic panel where she basically tells Wolverine how his ass is really tight, like because he's clenching, and I think that would be a really funny thing to have in the game, not like a reference, or like sort of a reference to that, right? But yeah, I think you could go Colossus easily. You could easily put someone else in there. There's another version in the comics where Rogue throws Nightcrawler, and there's loads of different versions of these, the Fastball Special, so to speak. I think that one's called the Death Star Drop or something like, not Death Star, something like that. But yeah, I think that would be the best way of doing it. And also it links with Hulk as well. So basically you'd have another person who could throw Wolverine. Basically, I think that should just end up being all the big characters being able to throw Wolverine over time. So don't get me wrong, this is a very small list of characters, and it's primarily basing it around the team-ups, as you guys can tell, and a few ideas for other characters outside of that. But yeah, I really do enjoy this idea, and these ideas, and I think that a lot of them would be actually quite fun, and I think it would allow for a lot more variety in gameplay to be able to pick other characters instead of one character to initiate these team-ups. So that's kind of the idea I was going for. Let me know what you guys think of my choices and my ideas. There are a lot more obscure characters for a number of these, or less pickable characters, so tell me what you think. Anyway guys, thank you for watching as always. I'll see you later.